please welcome to the stage the designer of these incredible clothes, Anouk Wipprecht. Welcome to Brain Bar, Anouk. Wow, these are incredible. Can you tell me a little bit about them? Can we go like dress by dress? Where do we start?
Yeah, sure. So we have here Lila. She's wearing a 3D printed dress. They are all like having 3D printed elements. And this one is the heartbeat dress. So this dress is beating on the heart.
The heartbeat dress.
Yeah,
cool.
Correct. What I do is I create robotic and electronic garments, and this is a little showcase that we're giving you right now.
What do I need to know about this dress?
It's a collaboration with Swarovski, it's a jewelry brand, and we were looking to see if we could find a way to record the heartbeat from the frontal area instead of like the area that the heart is sort of. So that's kind of a cool thing, the crystal in the front is part of that.
Wow.
So we also have Greta here, who's wearing a proximity dress. Again, a 3D printed dress, which has hip parts that should move, but I had a little technical problem with this dress. But normally when you come closer, the hip elements, they go out and you make space, cool. Basically. The color here, what she has is like a sensor, an ultrasonic rangefinder, and that is how the dress is reacting. So a lot of these dresses are based on sensors, so they sense either the surroundings or they sense the body itself.
Wow, cool, nice.
So
Next we go here.
We also have Lara here, who's wearing, again, a 3D printed dress. These dresses have all been printed on different machines. So this one has been printed on an SLS machine. This is multi-jet fusion, and this is a resin printer. And this is my own home 3D printer. So this is on a normal printer. And this dress is basically, I'm going to open source it. This is the first time that I'm showing it.
Wow,
I'm also trying to open source the dress so people can themselves play with mechanical elements,
cool.
and create their own dresses that are moving and lighting up.
It's got like moving flaps and stuff. What does that react to?
Currently, I'm still in the process, but it's going to react on like her emotions. So
Whoa.
So
she's feeling very open right now.
Yeah. Flittering.
But that might change. I get it. I get it. Okay, let's have a look over here.
We have Panna here. Panna is also in a dress that got released last week. It's the screen dress. It's a dress based on brain signals. So there's like these little screens in here, and it measures brain signals. The more cognitive load you have, the bigger the pupils start to get, sort of. So again, I was talking about sensing the body, sensing the surroundings, and brain signals are really, really fun to work with as well.
And this is happening right now?
Correct. So,
wow, so that's like a medium and varying cognitive load. Oh, see, as soon as I started talking, the cognitive load minimized. That's how stupid I am. Awesome. That is so cool.
Yeah, and all these dresses, it's kind of cool what you can do when you see like fashion as an interface, what you can do with that, but it's also really fun to make. All these dresses are based on really small computers with like the use of electronics, and it doesn't cost as much as like 20 years ago, so it's just a really fun process to make. And if you want to make yourself a fun dress to wear in the evening or something, that's always
I've been looking.
Yes.
That's so cool. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for the models and the dresses. Big round of applause. Thank you so much for coming. Anouk, I'd love to have a chat with you. Do you have some time?
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. Please have a seat here. We wanted you here for Brain Bar last year.
Yeah.
But you weren't available because you were busy working with James Cameron.
Yes, correct,
Can you tell me about that project? And follow-up question, does it rhyme with Schmavatar?
I cannot say too much about it, but it's about the last thing that you said, and it has to do with AI. It's a documentary that hasn't come out yet. Sometimes you're doing a documentary and it just takes really ages. I had one time, it took like 2 or 3 years until it came out. But it is with somebody that is a good friend of mine. Her name is Victoria Modesta, and she's a bionic pop artist. She only has one leg, so she has a prosthetic leg, and I have been working with her for the last 10 years. And she's a really cool advocate of like people that are differently abled. In her case, she lost her leg in like early on in life, and that is a little bit what that documentary is about. out. And yeah, together we did that project. So that was what I was busy with at that time.
Oh, that's very cool. When is that coming out? Do you know?
I'm not sure. It should be in the next coming months.
Nice.
I think you already saw a little preview on one of the screens before.
Cool. And what platform is that on? Where can we find it?
I think it's going to be like something like Netflix or something.
Okay.
It's going to be called The Age of AI. So
wow.
Yeah.
Nice. I'm looking forward to that. So you're in the field of fashion tech. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me a little bit about that, what it is, and sort of your place in it?
Yeah, I've been doing this for like about 20 years. What I always say, like computers used to be like really, really big. So you have like, a dress that looks super cute, but you turn around and there's this beast of a computer on the back, sort of. So yeah, technology has become like really small, and yeah, the little microcontrollers that I work with are like super tiny. So they became like really easy to integrate in garments, in fabrics, in devices, and all of that stuff. So that's kind of, that's kind of my biggest hobby and also my work, so that's good.
But that's kind of a pretty niche field. Like, how did you get into it?
I started with fashion design because I like fashion, the fact that it's like expressive, that you can tell something about yourself, something maybe about your culture, other people. I'm not religious myself, but if you're religious, you can. So there's a lot of different things that you can do, like with fashion, of like expressing something. And I thought that was really interesting, so I got into fashion when I was 14 years old. I got pretty good at like constructing garments and all of that stuff, but somehow it was not enough for me, because I always say if I stand up in the morning and I put on a happy dress, in the evening I might be tired and not happy anymore. I'm still wearing the same dress, so I started to think of like, oh, how can that be changing? How can we maybe change or moving elements or something? And when I was 17 years old, I got really fascinated by robots, and for me, robots had basically the heartbeat and the brain that I wanted my garments to have. So I started to get into programming, into engineering, into robotics, and then I started to combine these things. So my earlier works are fabrics that start to like move and react and start to like sing and dance almost. So so it's really,
that's so cool.
It's really fun.
I wonder sometimes about fashion tech itself. So the tech is about innovation and things like that.
Yeah.
Do you see sort of the current work that we just saw on stage? Do you see that as part of a continuum of innovation? Because, I mean, we can go back hundreds of years. Like, we can say that pockets was an innovation in fashion.
Yeah.
So is this separate from that because it incorporates robotics and computers, or is it just a natural evolution? How do you look at it?
I think it's a natural evolution. Again, if you look at technology being very big at the beginning of this century and how small it is now and how sensoric, and then other things that are coming, like we're working more with sensing the heartbeat and sensing the brain. So it was kind of a more natural thing that I see going. Now the designs that you just saw are very over the top sometimes, right? So I'm not sure that that's necessarily something that's everybody like right now will wear, right? But there are like a lot of nuances, so I would wear that, but somebody else might really want. And I spoke before this with one of the reporters for an interview, and we were talking about the notion of like something just for yourself. Maybe everything doesn't have to be like super expressive, so for everybody there's something that also people come up to me with, like, hey, I want to feel when I start to get anxious, right? Should that be something very expressive, or really for yourself, some like little vibrator, like motors that can start to buzz when your anxiety level goes up? And that's a really pretty and a really intimate thing, right?
Right, because that might not even be something that you realize is happening.
Yeah.
And so this is a good sort of feedback loop of, hey, by the way, you need to calm down.
Yeah. I think currently we have really a big mental health crisis, like especially in America, and that is mostly because people don't know their boundaries anymore. We're just doing too much. And if you have a design or something around your body that can tell you, like, hey, slow down, or chill out, I think that's a really nice thing. And if that thing can be happening with a piece of garment that you wear, I think that's a really beautiful thing.
That's amazing. Actually, you brought this up. I heard recently about a smart dress that was made in Brazil. I think this was a project that was done by an ad agency. But this dress, it basically detected every time a woman was groped in public. And then that was used to make a big statement about the safety of women in public in Brazil. What other kinds of social issues do you take seriously and do you try to incorporate in your work?
Yeah, I think that products, I think I know it. And in specific, what I thought was interesting about the concept was it didn't only record when you get groped, but also where you get groped. Right. And I thought that was like a really interesting thing. Yeah, such things, for example, I have a dress, the spider dress, when you walk up to it, it's literally attacking. I think it was early on one of the screens here. And that really talks about personal space, right? And the private space that we have around us, sort of. And yeah, I think like if you can have a wearable device that does something like that, like the product in Brazil that can say like, oh, hey, and create a little bit of statement on that, but also put attention to that, right? The fact that it's happening, for example. I think that's cool because you have a wearable research device that you can not only say, hey, this is happening, you can really quantify, you can really show that things like that are happening. So I think that's really cool.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm sort of fascinated by your process, because coming up with dresses that react to your cognitive load or your heartbeat and stuff like that, that's got to start with an idea. So can you walk me through the process of coming up with the idea? What is it like when you have caught an idea that is worth exploring? And how do you make that a reality? Like, can you walk me through the process?
Especially with brain signals. Brain signals is not really, it's pretty hard to get into that, and I'm definitely not a neuroscientist of anyway, but I've been working with brain signals now for the last 8 to 10 years, and it's just really, really fun. So working with the data yourself and then coming up with like, oh, hey, interesting, what can that be? And I did a few projects that are around BCI's brain-computer interfaces and neuroscience as well. So Agent Unicorn is a project for children. It's a device with a little camera in the head. It's for children with ADHD, and it basically records when their focus goes up. The little camera and the unicorn horn goes on, and it records whatever is happening around them. And that is a little bit has to do with like, for example, the pharmaceutical industry giving really quickly medicine to a child, for example. And I'm like, oh, let's build a device to see how their brain works and to show them back how their brain works, so they can maybe also like take it easy, take it slower, and not needing that medication, right? To a dress that has 1024 channels, the pangolin dress, the pangolin skill dress, and that really shows every single channel that you have. It's in direct contact with the dress, so it really shows that to this dress, which is easier to wear. So that's good if you guys Google the pangolin dress. It's a beast, but it's really cool. But to this dressing where I'm looking not necessarily the focus level, I'm looking at the workload and the cognitive load that we are going through over the day, sort of, you know. It's always also really fun if you're wearing a device like this. I was testing it out with my friend Sean last week at Ars Electronica, and I was asking him questions like, oh, think count to 10, or, you know, think of your favorite dish. And then I said like, oh, think of a really cute puppy, and the eyes went open, and it was just like, it's a really fun thing to see the data directly. And we tend to see data in little graphics and all of that stuff, but it's really more fun to see it in an animation or something happening around the body, I think.
Do you see that with more complicated emotions as well? Because, you know, affection for a puppy or basic cognitive function like counting, that's one thing, but what about more complex emotions like jealousy or disappointment in yourself or something like that? Is there something that you can see with emotions like that?
Yes, but it goes a little bit, it's a little bit more difficult because a lot of people come up to me and a lot of people that are working with body data sort of, and they're saying like, oh, I want to work with emotions. And then you need to tell them like, well, first of all, like really measuring emotions is still a really hard thing to do in these times and age sort of, you know, because and even if you can recognize it using body signals, you can recognize things like stress, fight or flight. There are things that you can measure. A thing like jealousy is still a little bit like the old school psychological way of like a question and answer round before you really can say, okay, this is jealousy or this, and there's always a human element in there. There are some systems that can kind of detect it, but like it's still really hard. So you cannot really maybe measure really easily the whole scale of emotions. You can say like, oh, a person is elevated, that is fight or flight, is something that galvanic skin response, for example, can show you. The pH digits of your sweat levels. So you always need to approach it from a different way. So jealousy would be a little bit fight or flight, right? But is it, one interesting thing is like, for example, being scared or being horny. We see that data as the same sort of, wow, it's totally different
they both dilate
feelings.
your pupils.
Yeah.
increase blood flow.
Yeah, so it's still like kind of guessing, and depending on that, on how we work with emotions. But if you can detect that, that's of course really, really fun. Yeah.
That's like a minefield for giving mixed signals, isn't it?
Yeah. Also the mixed signal dress. Yeah.
So, if you can tell me, what mistakes have you made along your journey, and how did you overcome them? Oh, I really screwed that one up, and this is what I learned.
That's a good question, because I made a lot of mistakes. I cannot really. One time I told my partner I sewed the scissors into a dress. So there was one mistake that I am always checking: don't sew your scissors in a dress. But yeah, other things that, from a more technological sense, I cannot really necessarily think of it right now. I might come back. Yeah. Yeah,
we'll come back to that. But, okay, this is a sort of related question, but can you tell me about privacy? Because obviously, whenever we talk about tech and its incorporation into things, especially when it has to do with our bodies, privacy always comes up. So when we're talking about putting out signals about our heart rate or cognitive function or emotions, whether we're scared or horny, privacy is an issue. Can you tell me about how you approach privacy in your work?
I think from privacy from a bigger sense is like what I can think of that we might want to be scared of is like if bad people get sort of access to this, right, in the wrong way, like an insurance company, right? If an insurance company exactly knows how you are doing, and maybe when you're not feeling well, you need to pay a bigger premium. So there's a lot of things in the wearable scene, and when you're working with body data that you might want to be a little bit scared about or hesitant about. So that's always a good thing to make kind of agreements about. If we really have this map of how everybody's feeling, that can be like a really scared thing. And that's a lot. Talking to different different instances. Also like bringing that awareness sort of. Another thing is like privacy. If you're working with electronics and, for example, you want to use a camera on the body, that is very invasive, right? Having a camera, because I can basically have a little camera on, nobody might see it, I take data, I use it for my thing, but somebody else can put it to another use, right? So instead of using cameras in my designs, what you also saw here, some things I can easily solve by having a camera there, because, for example, the spider dress, it can exactly see how many people, it can detect faces. It's like, okay, there's 40 people around you. But I decide not to take a camera in my garments, for example, because, talking again about invasive and non-invasive pieces of electronics, especially if you put it on your body. So I prefer, for example, to use an ultrasonic rangefinder, a thermal sensor, anything else that is not like an eye, anything else that's not camera related, that I can still, with a little bit more effort, kind of get the same information, and I rather do that than placing something more invasive on the body.
So you're like taking a step back, basically.
Yeah, it's and that's also like always interesting when I talk to bigger companies. Like I'm not going to call them right now, but companies that work with cameras in a little bit a bad way, right? And I'm always like, so what can be a more less invasive solution here, right? And I think that's always a good question to ask yourself when you're busy with electronics and all of that stuff. Is this invasive? Yes or no? And if it's invasive, what can be, even if it's a little bit more time or costs more money to research, what can be a nicer way forward here, right?
That sounds pretty reasonable. Now, you mentioned a couple of times the spider dress. Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about it? As far as I understand it, it's a dress that attacks when it feels like the wearer is being attacked rather than approached. Tell me a little bit about that.
The spider dress is measuring up to 25 feet, so like in frontal, it works on ultrasonic rangefinders. And when people step into the personal space, it's literally attacking, because it's a mechanized system. It has 12 servo motors, so really small motors. And it basically measures the spaces around us. So we have our intimate space, so the space that is pretty close, the personal space, the social space, and, or for example, you guys are sitting in my public space at the moment. And This is something that got thought of by something called Edward T. Hall in the 60s, and he started to understand that people have different personal spaces. And he wrote about that in his book, The Hidden Dimension. You don't have to know all of that, but if you want, proxemics theory. And basically what he did was he measured that with a stick, a wooden stick, these personal spaces from person to person. So I took his research and I put that into my system. So my system is measuring that and sees basically little blobs. Again, I'm not using a camera, so it sees like blobs coming in. Whenever that happens, my system is reacting and it's attacking. Not just one time, I programmed something called 12 states of behavior, because otherwise it would be boring if it's just like this.
Right.
So depending on how you walk, it's like kind of weird. It's like different animations sort of when you walk into this space. And yeah, it's kind of a hybrid between the mechanics of a spider, the behavior of a cat, because a cat would give you a claw when you come close, and it's hosted on the human body.
I've got the scars to prove it, yeah.
Yes, okay. See?
Now, on personal space, that's something that varies on a culture-to-culture basis.
Yes.
Like in Hungary, we take our personal space very seriously. You don't stand too close to someone.
Yeah.
But I'm Indian, and personal space is not really a thing over there. Number one, because there isn't personal space, there's just too many people.
Yeah.
But also, we just don't have the same issues. So, for example, in Europe, let's say you're at a bus stop, you're wearing the spider dress because you got to go to work and you got to look good for work.
Yeah.
But then there's someone from a different culture who's standing a little bit too close to you for what the spider dress is programmed to detect as personal space invasion.
Yeah.
How do you account for that?
Well, in my case, sensoric, like technically it will always sense the person closest in a way. What I notice is like the funny thing about these designs is they're getting invited. So the spider dress has seen a lot of countries. It's been to like Amsterdam, it's been to London, Paris, all of that stuff. Also in the US, it has been to Asia. And the different places that I travel to, you really see the behavior of the system being so differently. In America, people are a little bit more gentlemen or gentle women space around the dress, and they're like, oh, cool. So the system is reacting a little bit dense, But I'm from the Netherlands, and people maybe just like, not maybe quite like India, but in the Netherlands people come very fast, very close by, and it's like, okay, hey, what is this? And very provocative. So the system is always like just reacting and always like very aggressively reacting. So kind of, that is kind of, funny that you mentioned, because culture to culture, you really see that. You really see, not only in data I can see it, but I see physically how the dress is reacting differently in country to country, sort of. And that is, again, that's kind of the interesting thing about that as well.
And it's also so tricky to read the attacker's intentions, because again, if someone is coming up to you very exuberantly because they're so excited to see you and to give you a hug, like you're picking them up at the airport or something.
Yes.
That's different from someone coming up to you. That's a different story.
Actually, I had my first version of the spider dress was a black version. It was laser cut. It was very complex, a lot of screws. The second version is the one that you, I think, saw a little bit earlier on. Is fully 3D printed. That one I gave a sensor because the first one was always reacting, and it was a little bit annoying for the models or me or anybody wearing it. So the second version I gave a little respiration sensor. So when there's a friendly person in front, you basically breathe in and you breathe out, and then the system goes in a sleepy mode, sort of. Because the first system I found that the system was taking over. It was not really reacting on the behavior of the person, on the intent of the person. So the second dress I changed that, and I gave a little code of like, hey, it's fine, So that's also kind of fun between the first and the second dress, how you also need to look a lot at like the intent of this design, right, and how it can become more like comforting towards like the wearer. So there's a symbiosis between like the system and the wearer itself, sort of.
Right.
So.
Well, we have time for a couple more questions. Here's one that I'd really like to ask you. For anyone in the room who's interested in getting into fashion tech, what advice would you have for them? Like, how do you get started? Are there any tools or resources, or how can someone enter the field?
I think the most fun thing, if you're not coming from like more technical background, is to pick up like a little computer that you can easily program. There are like many. You have like Arduinos, Arduino.cc. It's an open source computer board platform that you can buy. There's a lot of spin-offs of them. The first thing would be like not to make your project too big, but make something small. I challenge you all. Halloween is around the corner, so design something for there and integrate electronics. It's my favorite day of the year. I know it's a little bit more American, but it has a lot with, to do with that. So And think of something small that you can do as a first step. For example, if you're getting into electronics and programming, maybe making as simple as making an LED blink, making a motor move, and all of that stuff. And from there on, dive deeper into it. A lot of people that are starting with electronics, they are like, oh, I'm going to build this drone and this and that. And sometimes that's maybe not the smartest thing because you want to go in it from the basics, sort of, you know. And yeah, learning the basics of engineering is really, really important if you're doing this because you want things to be safe as well, right? So. Yeah.
Solid advice,
yeah. Pick up a computer board and start to play.
Now let's talk about in the realm of imagination. Let's assume that budget is not an issue, access to resources is not an issue. What would your dream design be if you had access to whatever you wanted?
Oh, you're asking all the questions. Yeah, that's a good question. I did a lot of things. I work with, from fire to smoke to mechanics to Tesla coils. I think a lot of like my ideas are already possible, either me or I do collaborations with friends. We're like, oh, there's this idea that we have, sort of, you know. And yeah, you can, and nowadays you can get like pretty close, sort of. I think anything that goes beyond a certain boundary of the body can be cool, sort of, you know. The product with the Tesla coils is kind of cool because it's 2 times 500,000 volts, and there's a lot of like sort of electricity going on there. I cannot think of something like right now. Maybe like better, smaller motors, because that's always the thing. If you want to build things that are standing very far from the body, the motor also needs to become bigger and bigger, and then it just becomes this really bulky thing, sort of. So yeah, really strong motors. What I always have been wanting, and the machines are not there, but shape memory alloy is an alloy that can change. You can make it move by putting a little voltage on it. And I think that would be really cool if we can 3D print structures like that and then make them move, because that would be making a lot of improvement in the field of robotics, for example. So yeah, it's like small things like that that can set off like bigger things again, right?
That's really cool because that's a small application, and then but the impact of that is massive and very far-reaching.
Yeah.
Anouk, thank you so much for coming out here. Give it up for Anouk Wipprecht, everybody. This is a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Awesome.